Hey, Karen.
Hey, Dr. Rogers.
I know we missed it. We didn't cross paths in
I know.
Minneapolis.
Yeah, well, what do you expect with 6,000 people?
Yeah. Well, I ran into some other people. They were like, "Oh yeah, we met your other trustee, Karen." So I heard other people tell of you and Elizabeth there.
Yeah,
But it was a good conference though.
a very good conference. Yes, learned a lot. Learned that I need to learn more.
Yes, I second that. Karen, I can't remember. Are you just a committee member or are you the chair of this one?
I thought I was just the committee member. Let's see. I am chair of risk management,
Okay, well, I'll take the
She's,
reins today then.
it
but it
says
doesn't
she's
matter.
chair.
I'm sorry.
On the agenda, it says that comprised of committee chair Karen Dukowski.
Oh, well, wonderful.
Well,
Okay.
I was thinking as the
As
as the
treasurer,
treasurer, as the
as treasurer.
treasurer, you would chair the.
Okay.
If you're not comfortable today, then I can definitely run it today and then transition it after.
All right. I would appreciate that. Thank you.
No worries. All right, everyone. Hope everyone's doing all right this week. And I know for us who returned from Minneapolis, we're still recovering. At least I know I am a little bit. I wasn't prepared for that chill, but I'm showing 101 as official start time for our meeting. And we'll start with roll call, and then I'm not sure on the library side. Do we have Chandler? Is Chandler, are you handling roll call for us today?
Dr. Rogers, Martha Ford will be handling roll call today.
Thank you, Floresto. Well, Martha, I will turn it over to your capable hands to walk us through roll call or lead us through roll call.
Oh, good afternoon. So, Dr. Rogers,
Present.
uh, Kate Turner Whiteley, uh, Elizabeth Foyt, Karen Dukowski,
Present.
and Brittany Paloma Fielder.
Present.
Beautiful. Okay. And I don't believe any of our other trustees are online to be recognized at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we will roll right into public comment. Do we have anyone signed up?
Oh, no, we do not. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. We have our third agenda item, which is acceptance of the proposed agenda. Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion carries. Let's go to new business, and then Floresto, we'll turn over to you in your capable hands to, as always, to walk us through the tentative budget. And just reminding the fellow trustees, this is for information only.
All right, thank you, Dr. Rogers. Hopefully you can see my screen there. And good afternoon. For the record, I'm Floresto Cabayas, the district's chief financial officer. I'll be presenting the tentative budget for fiscal year 2027, which covers the period from July 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2027. The tentative budget is scheduled to be submitted to the Nevada Department of Taxation by April 15th. The final budget will be presented to the Board of Trustees at the budget hearing during the May board meeting on May 21st. Overall, what you'll see in this budget is continued financial stability, our continued disciplined spending, and it's a transition out of a major capital construction phase. Starting with total revenues across all funds, the general fund increase is primarily driven by continued growth in property taxes. The capital projects fund is projected to remain stable year over year. Those revenues are interest income. Special revenue funds are budgeted conservatively. The $20 million for grants and the $10 million for gifts are intentionally high. They're designed to accommodate all potential gifts and grants the district might receive. And as always, the district continues to operate without any outstanding debt. Looking at the table on this slide, total revenues increased by about $6.6 million, or roughly 5.9%, with that growth entirely within the general fund. On the expenditure side, the general fund increase is primarily due to personnel-related costs. The capital projects fund shows a notable decrease, about $6.9 million, or roughly 29%. That reflects the completion of the West Las Vegas Library project. Special revenue funds are aligned with their respective revenues. We only spend gifts and grants we actually receive. And again, the district is debt-free. Overall, total expenditures across all funds decreased slightly year over year, due mostly to the reduction in capital activity.
And then Floresta, if I may just make a point or just ask for a clarification for some of our new board members. To just sort of break down that 6.8, that just means that we're not transferring money. We're transferring less from the general fund to the capital project fund because we've completed the project, correct?
I'll actually go over the transfer from the general fund to the capital projects fund, but that $6.9 million actually reflects the decrease in expenditures from the 2026 budget year to the 2027 budget. So overall in the capital projects fund, it decreased by $6.9 million because there were more construction costs related to West Las Vegas in the prior budget year, as opposed to going into the 2027 budget year. There'll be less capital project expenditures because of the construction costs being completed.
You said it much more cleanly than I did.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I hope that clarifies everything. Thank you. Let's see. We are on total revenues in the general fund. So focusing here, growth in real estate values, which is reflected in assessed values, are continuing to support increases in property tax revenues. And that's primarily the driver of overall revenue growth. The consolidated sales tax revenues are projected to remain flat. As always, staff continues to monitor this closely, but we're not assuming any significant growth at this time. We're also not assuming significant declines. In fact, in the current fiscal year, 2026, sales tax revenues are on track to come in higher than budgeted. Investment income is stable in the budget. That's because current investment rates were secured in prior years, even though the broader rate environment is expected to decline. You'll notice some increases in charges for services and miscellaneous revenues, but those are smaller components of the overall revenue picture. For general fund expenditures.
And then, Floresta, could you maybe give some examples of what's comprised of the miscellaneous revenue?
That could be made up of the charges for venue use. There are, for example, like just the different events used by customers of the district. You know, in our auditoriums, for example, we have contracts with other libraries, you know, for City of North Las Vegas library, for example, where there's an exchange of, you know, services there that we charge for. And there are other miscellaneous items there. This is where we record things like E-rate funds, which is a subsidy from the federal government for our technology use. And so those are just a few examples.
Yeah. And I think that will be beneficial when we do for the full board, you know, because miscellaneous, you know, people have different feelings about miscellaneous. So it would be good maybe to dismiss any preconceived notions, just maybe give a couple examples of what's in miscellaneous.
Okay, yes.
Everything else is pretty self-explanatory.
Okay, yeah, definitely we'll do that for the budget hearing. Thank you.
Okay.
For general fund expenditures, I may have already mentioned that salaries and benefits have increased, and that reflects scheduled pay adjustments that are going to be effective July 1st, 2026. And that's still the largest portion of our operating budget. Services and supplies are basically flat year over year, with increases limited to about 2.5%. And that reflects deliberate cost containment efforts across departments. This follows direction from Executive Director Watson to identify opportunities to reduce or avoid cost increases wherever possible. An example here is IT, where staff was able to renew contracts such as for mobile hotspot lending in a way that reduced overall costs while maintaining service levels. That's the type of approach, reviewing contracts, rebidding where appropriate, and aligning service levels with actual demand. That's something we're emphasizing across the district. And we're seeing similar efforts in other areas too, from library operations to facilities maintenance. Divisions are taking steps to more assertively manage costs from the current year into the upcoming budget. Library materials funding remains consistent at 15% of total expenditures. That's in line with the board's policy commitment. And overall, the general fund budget increases by about 3.8%. And that's in line with our revenue growth.
And then you may get a question, Floresta, regarding, how does the new West Side Library sort of contribute some of these increased expenditures, if at all? So.
Yes, that's another item we can go over in detail for the budget hearing. And just to comment on that here, that's another example of where staff have done a really good job of containing costs. Meaning, although the West Las Vegas Library, the new branch, is really replacing the previous branch, there was additional staff and services that we added and are providing at that branch. But because of the way we've offset those operating expenditures in other areas and really took advantage of vacancies, for example, and converting positions there in order to bring on board new staff, the cost of that new library is actually fairly close to a wash. And so that's something we can discuss further, unless there are any more questions about that here. And we actually going to, let's see here, this slide. This shows a breakdown of expenditures by major category. And as you see in the chart, salaries and benefits make up 63% of total expenditures. Services and supplies accounts for 22%, and library materials represent 15%. We feel accomplished in maintaining this positive distribution. For local governments like the district, personnel costs often make up a larger share of the budget because we're service driven. So having this level of balance with a meaningful portion still going towards materials and operations shows how well the allocation of resources are being managed across staffing, services, and direct community impact. And the West Las Vegas Library is another great example of that, as I just discussed. Looking at fund balances, the general fund ending fund balance is projected at approximately $16.6 million, which represents about 15% of total expenditures. And the 15% is actually higher than industry standards, but that's the kind of conservatism that has served the district well over time, especially during the pandemic. And our approach is to balance current needs with long-term sustainability. So these reserves are there for flexibility, but also to protect the district during uncertain time periods, especially given the variability we've seen in CTX or sales tax revenues. And this ending fund balance in the general fund is after a planned transfer of $27 million to the capital projects fund to support ongoing capital needs. We're using reserves strategically through these planned transfers to support capital projects rather than ongoing operations. And like prior years, that transfer gives us flexibility, but if the general fund needs to keep resources for any reason, the transfer can be adjusted. And Dr. Rogers, this goes back to your question previously about the transfers. It's actually $27 million in the upcoming budget year, and that's higher than the $18 million that we're transferring in the current fiscal year, 2026. And that's just a combination of all of the components I've been going over, from higher revenues to more controls over the expenditures in the operating fund, again, as directed by the executive director. We've actually managed to increase the reserve, while actually maintaining at 15% while increasing the transfer of $27 million, which, as I mentioned, there aren't any current projects, large projects like the West Las Vegas project planned in 2027, but it definitely sets us up for having the resources to move forward with any capital initiatives initiated by the executive director or the board. Does that answer some of your questions from earlier in the presentation?
Yes, sir.
All right.
And then for Russell, could you do me one favor and go back to that pie chart? Yeah,
Yes.
right there. Where does capital projects fall in the pie chart, if at all?
That would be a separate fund. So the general fund represents our operating fund. You know, the majority of staff are accounted for here, and they're responsible for, you know, operating the library branches and our other programs. And you'll see there's the 15% that represents the library materials purchases. That's actually the only capital component in the general fund or operating fund. This
Gotcha.
is a summary of the capital projects fund. So hopefully
Thank you.
this answers, yeah, some of your questions. Let's see here. I noted earlier that we are in a transition from major construction to ongoing reinvestment. And I just discussed that with the West Las Vegas Library project complete, funding is even more focused now on technology replacement and building maintenance, along with long-term infrastructure needs. Of course, we don't have a new library we're building, you know, in the upcoming year with the West Las Vegas Library opening up recently. But you see at the top of this summary here, technology replacements and building repair and maintenance, those have always been prioritized year to year. And again, that's served the district well over time, given some of the economic challenges we faced from the housing downturn, financial crisis, the Great Recession, the pandemic recently. I always point those out because it's a great reminder of why we manage our reserves the way we do. And if you take a look at the very last column here, fiscal year 2027 ending fund balance, we break it down by programs. And you see that there's about an $8.5 million ending fund balance in both the technology program and the building repair and maintenance program. And this is another, you know, good point to review with the trustees every year. And that $8 million represents a 2-year reserve, meaning that we expect to spend about $4 million a year in both of these programs individually. But you'll see that we maintain the $8 million in order to continue maintaining technology and facilities maintenance if for some reason we aren't able to transfer funds from the general fund into the capital projects fund. That's where the $27 million we just discussed gives us that flexibility. We don't have to transfer all $27 million if there is a need in the operating fund. What you will notice here is that I mentioned our expected expenditures in these two programs. Again, technology and building repair is $4 million, but they're higher in fiscal year 2027 because there are projects in both programs that staff will not complete this year for various reasons, but the reserves and resources are there. So those funds will be rolled over into fiscal year 2027. So some of these projects can be completed, which is why we do have a higher than a $4 million expenditure in fiscal year 2027 for those two programs. The other larger program we have here is capital construction. We finished the West Las Vegas branch, which is brand new, and there's no expected capital construction in the upcoming year, but we still earmarked $1 million in this program to prepare for any upcoming major capital initiatives. There could be the purchase of land, for example, that may be an opportunity in this program for future building, but we may very well save the entire million if there aren't any significant costs that the district will incur, depending on how major capital project planning goes. The other programs, vehicle purchase and replacement, furniture purchase and replacement, we have a general services and community engagement capital program that, again, those are funds that are earmarked for items like improvements to our venues or any other items that may be unexpected under the general services division. So funds are earmarked there as well, but they're relatively small compared to the larger programs we have here. And you can see how the transfers are being allocated, the $27 million I referred to. They're, again, focused on the two critical programs I mentioned in technology and building. And the remainder, 18.5 million, is earmarked for future major capital initiatives, which I've been summarizing along the way. And any questions on this capital project fund?
Nope. Nope.
All right. Well, that's the fiscal year 2027 budget in a nutshell, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, I always ask clarifying questions as you're presenting, so I don't usually have any toward the end, but I'll definitely see if my fellow trustees have any questions overall.
I don't have any questions. I'm just always amazed that we have the amount of money in the capital projects that we are able to proceed and do bigger and better things. This is certainly a way to manage your funds, and I appreciate everything that you and your staff do, Director Cabayas. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Treasurer Biskowski.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't have any questions, but I'm a slow thinker, so that doesn't mean I won't have questions on Thursday.
And I echo what Karen shared about just our appreciation for how thorough you are in your presentations always, and just the general philosophy, between the executive director and yourself and the rest of the leadership team and the entire organization in terms of stewardship and fiscal responsibility and, taking care of our current needs while planning for our future needs. So much appreciated. I serve on a lot of different boards, and, I wish every organization was as financially healthy as this one.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Thank you, Trustee Fiedler.
Mhm.
All right. With that said, if there are no other questions, then we will check in with Martha to see if we have anyone sign up for public comment.
No, we don't.
All right. All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
You have a second?
I will second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. We
right.
are adjourned. Everyone have a great rest of your day and week, and see you all on Thursday.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.